I'm archiving every distortion. I am Ibrahim Traoré, and today I'm pulling off your masks. Yes, you heard correctly. I, whom you call a young military junta leader, whom you brand as a dangerous radical, whom you serve up as an anti-Western dictator, am now telling you the truth. And this time you cannot turn off your microphones.
Ibrahim Traoré's powerful message to the world. In the shifting sands of African politics, few names have emerged with as much intensity, passion, and resonance as Captain Ibrahim Traoré.
This time you cannot turn away your cameras. This time your editors cannot cut this speech, because the world you monopolize no longer exists, because millions will hear these words now, without passing through your filters, without being subjected to your distortions, without being muddied by your lies. I am 34 years old. Every day of my life, I grew up with your lies. As a child, I would watch Africa on television. Always the same images, children with flies, dry lands, weapons, death. This is Africa, they told us. This is what Africa is. And we believed it. We were ashamed of ourselves. We were ashamed of our own lands, of our own people.
The young leader of Burkina Faso, who has captured both the imagination of his people and the attention of the global stage. His rise to power at only 34 years old marked not just a political change within his nation, but also a symbolic rebirth of the broader struggle for African sovereignty, dignity, and independence in a world that has long been dominated by colonial legacies and neocolonial exploitation.
But then I grew up, I read, I researched, I questioned, and I understood that the Africa you showed us wasn't real. The story you told us was a lie. The fate you imposed on us was a script you had written. For years, how have you portrayed Africa? How have you shown it? How have you sold it to your viewers? As if we were creatures who had no share of humanity, as if we were savages left outside of civilization.
When Traoré speaks, his words cut through the familiar political jargon and instead resound with the raw voice of a people who have endured decades of foreign manipulation, poverty, and violence. His powerful message to the world is not confined to the borders of Burkina Faso. It is a clarion call to all nations, particularly those in Africa, to reclaim their agency, to resist domination.
As if we were wretches waiting for you to save us. Every day, every hour, every minute, the same story plays on your screens. Hunger, war, disease, corruption, terror, chaos. These are the words that come to mind when Africa is mentioned. In your Africa dictionary, there are no other words. No hope, no success, no development, no resistance, no honor, no pride, no victory.
And to pursue genuine self-determination. To understand his message, one must first trace the roots of his rise and the historic weight he carries as a young revolutionary leader. Traoré's journey into leadership was forged in the fires of Burkina Faso's long struggle against instability and exploitation. The country, historically rich in resources like gold, cotton, and fertile land, has paradoxically been ranked among the poorest nations in the world. This contradiction is no accident, but the direct result of centuries of colonial plunder followed by decades of neocolonial control that left African nations politically weak and economically dependent. When Traoré rose to power in September 2022, he did so not merely as a soldier seizing control of the state, but as a representative of a collective frustration simmering among the youth and working classes of his country. His coup against interim leader Paul-Henri Damiba was not framed as an act of ambition but as a patriotic duty, an act to defend the sovereignty of Burkina Faso and to rescue it from the cycle of insecurity and foreign dependence that had rendered it unstable. For many, his rise evoked the memory of Thomas Sankara, the iconic Burkinabe revolutionary of the 1980s who also took power in his 30s and whose assassination left a scar on the nation's consciousness. Like Sankara, Traoré has embraced the language of liberation and justice.
Any news director in a meeting, any columnist at their keyboard ever thought, why are the people of the world's richest lands poor? Here are the numbers for you, real numbers. Africa owns 70% of the world's cobalt reserves. Your cell phone, your computer, your electric car won't work without cobalt. This cobalt comes from Congo, but Congolese can't afford cell phones. Africa owns 90% of the world's platinum reserves. Catalytic converters, electronic devices, medical implants, they all need platinum. This platinum comes from South Africa, but South Africans are crushed by unemployment. Africa provides 30% of the world's gold production.
Speaking to his people with clarity and honesty rather than diplomatic evasions. The essence of Ibrahim Traoré's message to the world is built around one central theme: the fight for sovereignty. In his speeches at international summits, press conferences, and rallies, he repeatedly emphasizes that Burkina Faso, like many African countries, is tired of being treated as a colony, a pawn, or a marketplace for foreign powers. He has condemned the centuries-long extraction of Africa's wealth, pointing to the fact that nations blessed with immense natural resources remain trapped in cycles of poverty because the profits from those resources flow outward rather than benefiting local communities. This is not simply an economic critique, but a moral one.
Mali, Burkina Faso, Ghana, Tanzania, gold flows like rivers from our lands, but our people swim in poverty. Africa supplies 65% of the world's diamond production. Botswana, Angola, Congo, Sierra Leone, billions of dollars worth of diamonds are extracted, but our miners live on $1 a day. Africa owns 35% of the world's uranium reserves. Niger, Namibia, South Africa. Nuclear plants run on our uranium. Paris lights burn with our uranium. But our villages have no electricity. And you still ask, why is Africa poor? No, the right question is, how was Africa kept poor while being so rich? Here's your answer. Colonialism didn't end. It changed shape.
Traore argues that Africa cannot speak of independence when it remains shackled to economic arrangements, foreign military bases, and exploitative trade agreements that reduce its people to second-class participants in the global economy. His call is not one of isolation but of dignity. He demands partnerships based on equality, respect, and mutual benefit rather than domination and exploitation. One of the most striking aspects of Traore's rhetoric is his uncompromising stance against imperialism. He has been especially vocal about the legacy of French colonial control in West Africa.
You used to come and occupy our lands. Now you come and establish companies. You used to take by force. Now you make agreements. You used to rule with the whip. Now you rule with credit. Let me give you concrete examples. With numbers, names, dates, but you'll never write about these. Glencore, Swiss-based mining giant, extracting cobalt in Congo. 2022 revenue, $256 billion. Tax paid to Congo, $500 million. That's 0.2%. Is this justice? Rio Tinto, British-Australian mining giant, extracting bauxite in Guinea. 20 million tons annually. What's left for Guinea? Environmental pollution and cancer. Total, now Total Energies, French oil giant, extracting oil in Angola, Nigeria, Congo.
Denouncing the continuing presence of French troops and the role of the CFA franc, the currency system tied to France that many argue limits true economic independence. In one of his most circulated statements, he boldly declared that Africans are not children who need guardians, and that foreign powers must leave if they do not respect the sovereignty of African nations. His words electrified audiences not only in Burkina Faso but across the continent, where citizens of Mali, Niger, Guinea, and other nations saw in Traoré a reflection of their own frustrations and aspirations. His message has inspired a renewed wave of Pan-African solidarity, with young people across the continent using his speeches as rallying cries for a new era of self-reliance and independence.
2022, profit, $36 billion investment in Africa, dirty pipelines, Anglo-American, founded in South Africa but now in London. Diamonds, platinum, iron, taking everything. What it left in South Africa, 6 million unemployed miners. And these are just the tip of the iceberg. What about the invisible, the secret deals, the offshore accounts, the transfer pricing tricks? Every year, $88 billion in illegal money flows out of Africa. Who writes about this? Every year, $45 billion in aid comes to Africa. Everyone writes about this, but no one says Africa is not the continent receiving aid, it's the continent giving aid.
At the same time, Ibrahim Traoré has framed his message in universal terms that transcend Africa. He has spoken of a world order that is unjust not only to Africans, but to all weaker nations caught in the web of exploitation by global superpowers. He condemns the hypocrisy of those who preach democracy and human rights while supporting dictatorships, fueling wars, and engaging in exploitative trade practices that harm ordinary people. By placing Burkina Faso's struggle within a global context.
Because you're part of the system too. Who are the biggest advertisers of New York Times, CNN, BBC, oil companies, mining companies, arms companies, pharmaceutical cartels, the companies that exploit Africa? You live on their money, you defend their interests, and what I'm about to tell you might cost me my life, but it's no longer time to be silent. France's system in Africa is the CFA franc. 14 African countries still use French colonial currency. 50% of these countries' central bank reserves sit in the French treasury. France applies negative interest to this money, so we pay France to use our own money. Through this system, France transfers $500 billion worth of resources from Africa every year. Does anyone write about this?
He elevates his message from one of national liberation to one of global justice. He speaks not only to Africans, but also to Latin Americans, Asians, and even citizens within Western nations who are disillusioned with the inequities of globalization. In this way, Traoré's message becomes a bridge, linking the historic struggles of colonized peoples with the broader quest for a fairer, more balanced international system.
No, but when France gives Africa 10 billion euros in aid, it makes headlines. Britain's system is more sophisticated. London is the world's money laundering center. City of London, offshore paradise. Every penny stolen from Africa passes through London. Jersey, Guernsey, Cayman Islands, Virgin Islands, all under British control. Africa's wealth hides there. America's system is AFRICOM, Africa Command, 46 military bases on the continent. Official purpose, security. Real purpose, resource control.
Another layer of his message to the world lies in his emphasis on the role of youth and collective action. As one of the youngest leaders in the world,
drones in our airspace every day, listening devices everywhere. They say fighting terrorism, but it's not terrorists. It's people's leaders who are targeted. China is the new player, says win-win, builds infrastructure, gives credit, but in exchange for what? 99-year port concessions, mining rights, agricultural lands, debt-trap diplomacy, ask Sri Lanka, ask Zambia, and you write about none of this. Why? Because you're not free press, you're corporate press, your bosses are billionaires.
Traoré embodies the generational shift taking place in Africa. He has repeatedly stated that Africa's future does not belong to the older elites who have often clung to power while serving foreign interests, but to the new generation that refuses to accept dependency as destiny. His rise has inspired young Africans who see in him proof that courage, conviction, and determination can change the course of history. He often reminds audiences that true liberation requires sacrifice, and that no nation can be free if it is unwilling to defend its own sovereignty. His call for Africans to take control of their destiny is not mere rhetoric. It is a demand for concrete action in fields like education, agriculture, industry, and defense.
Jeff Bezos bought Washington Post. Why? For love of journalism? Rupert Murdoch's media empire, Fox News, Wall Street Journal, The Sun, The Times, all from the same hand, all giving the same message. West is good, others are bad. Carlos Slim is the largest shareholder of New York Times, Mexican billionaire. Where's his wealth from? Monopolized telecommunications, got rich off Latin America's back, now controls America's most respected newspaper, and you claim to do independent journalism?
Perhaps one of the most powerful dimensions of Traoré's message is his insistence on dignity as the foundation of politics.
Who are your editors? Which schools did they graduate from? Harvard, Yale, Oxford, Cambridge? Always the same elite schools, always the same worldview, always the same prejudices.
In a world where African leaders are often seen as beholden to foreign capitals, Traoré's defiance stands out as an assertion that dignity is non-negotiable. He has refused to bow before institutions like the United Nations when he believes they act in bad faith or ignore the suffering of Africans. He has warned leaders like Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and others that Africa will not be a playground for global powers seeking resources.
How are your reporters selected? How many languages does your Africa correspondent speak? French, English, that's all. Swahili, Hausa, Yoruba.
Or alliances at the expense of its people. This defiance has earned him both admiration and hostility, but it has cemented his reputation as a leader who speaks truth to power without fear. Traoré's powerful message has also been amplified by symbolism. He often appears in military fatigues rather than suits, signaling that he is not a career politician but a soldier of the people. His simplicity and humility, walking among crowds, speaking directly without scripted notes, make him relatable in ways that many leaders are not. This authenticity strengthens his message, as people can sense that his words are not crafted for international applause, but born of genuine conviction. His approach recalls the revolutionary leaders of the past, from Thomas Sankara to Patrice Lumumba, and this historical continuity gives his message greater weight.